All right, so it's Todd Atkins. I'm back with Miguel at MMA Conspiracy Hour, and we're going to talk a little bit about this final kind of finalization of the WWE UFC merger and some of the stuff that came out, maybe more details that came out this time than the previous announcement. And before we start, as always, we want to talk about Live to Fight Design. They're our sponsor. You can find them at on Instagram at Live to Fight Design, and they make fight banners and gym banners. And if you use my promo code, you can get $20 off your order. And Miguel, I kind of want to give you kind of like an opening statement, maybe like an overall of what you thought of some of the stuff that came out from these new announcements of the merger.
You know, the Dana being Dana is the number one thing. Is he taking pot shots at people? You got the big press release, and some lawyer put out, that they wanted every fan of the WWE to be a UFC fan and vice versa in the future. And Dana comes out and craps all over it. And here's the point: is it's a $15 billion company. Dana's now got a few people in the room that he kind of has to pay attention to. This is something Dana's never had to deal with in the UFC. There's never been anybody that could tell Dana what to do. Maybe the Fertittas behind closed doors, but they gave him very much carte blanche and never stepped in or never had a, on the other side of the coin, Vince McMahon has, exerted his power with the wrestlers over and over again, different than Dana. Dana has never had any type of, any assault on his position in the company or any reason to take it. Dana is convinced that nobody knows more about fighting than Dana. So nobody can tell him what to do. And if he continues to do that, he may find out, or it could possibly play out this way. Maybe Dana's, overwhelms everybody in the room again. But now he's in there with a different kind of animal. And some of these lawyers and some of these creative people and things that really don't know much about fighting are what you need to get to that next level, which I don't know. What can they get to be $100 billion company? Can they get to be like Apple, $1 trillion company? In 20 years, you have to ask yourself that if those are the corporate goals, then it's a whole different ballgame. And Dana's gonna have peers, one of them being Vince McMahon.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you about because they said Vince is going to have veto power even in UFC decisions. Do you think he's going to act on any of that?
I don't think that Vince. I think in the room when they're making decisions of this level, if Dana and Vince are there, I think that they will more often than not be on the same side. I just said that nobody knows more about fighting than Dana. Well, clearly nobody knows more about pro wrestling than Vince. So in that respect, as like say the subject matter experts of the whole things, they are in the strongest position right now. They're going to get what they want. There's already been the slight crossover. You haven't seen the logos, you haven't seen any of that, but there's already been the slight crossover of the WWE using, mixed fight rules for the Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler rivalry that's going on now. No brainer since, Ronda is there and Shayna is a veteran of, more than 30 MMA fights. So that was a normal, natural first step, but it was a baby step. This was clearly a baby step for what's cut. And I think the press release was a good measure that we are going to feel it at some point. Will WrestleMania, things they could do over the years at this level. WrestleMania is the granddaddy of the WWE, and they compare it to the Super Bowl. The UFC will say that their shows are the same, but they don't have the careful isolation of WrestleMania as a hallowed event in the UFC. There isn't a single end of the year event or anything like that everybody looks forward to every year. WrestleMania has that position. So you get, one of the biggest, the Dallas Stadium, 80,000 people, and you do back-to-back nights with the UFC with John Jones defending against whoever the next character is, and put a couple of title fights on there. make it the biggest show ever, and then the next day they hit with WrestleMania. Now, a few years down the line, this is the kind of thing that they could do. Put WrestleMania on first and then give the UFC that second position and make a huge deal about it. And that way, the company's just growing and growing. Will the WWE catch them again? Does this sound familiar? Didn't they have Raw and another channel that they did? They split them up on two channels. One was the red team, one was the blue team in WWE. They're going to do that to grow and grow and grow. That's what I see. So yeah, things like that that seems simple, right? It's like, oh yeah, of course they can do that, or but it takes years to get to a position where you can book an 80,000 seat stadium 2 nights in a row. But now you're looking at something very few entertainment companies can say that they successfully are going to do 2 major live promotions like that back-to-back nights. They're setting a standard that takes them, and I think that this may be used as an argument in the lawsuit, that they're not just a fight company. They're an entertainment company. Look at all that goes into this. And show some, let the accountants fight it out over what the real expenditures are. But do they spend a lot of money on productions and things? Yeah. And I think that's only going to go over the top. And again, that will allow them to claim, if the fighters want, they can go to fight in Bellator, they can go fight in PFC and stuff. We are not even on that ball game. There, you have to fight on their TV station. We can give you fights every week because what we've created is a fighting empire. And like I said, I would not be surprised if within the next 3 years there was a huge purchase of a boxing component to this company. By for example, Bob Arum. I saw him in the news stating he hates Bob Arum. Why does he hate Bob Arum so much? Bob Arum's Tyson Fury's promoter. Is that enough reason? Or maybe Bob is standing in the way of selling his billion-dollar boxing empire. Bob's video library includes the Thrill in Manila, the Rumble in the Jungle. Bob put those on. So, Bob is another guy like Vince, where Dana can be a bull in the China shop all he wants, but he's out experienced by Vince, and he's out experienced by Bob Arum, and maybe that's what chafes him about Bob. But if they added that, like if Bob passed away and that corporation, whatever was left there, became a part of this, it was sucked up by Endeavor, then again, that idea that they are a complete entertainment, sports, combat thing that goes beyond the little leagues that are operating out there, becomes more feasible. It actually becomes a defense for their behavior on the selling points too. So I that could be what they're heading for. That's why I'd like a chance at that lawyer we had again, because this announcement shows me that the UFC and the WWE and the people in the room that say, okay, that's the strategy. Are we signing off on this and making it public? Once they said yes, it must mean they're making an assessment that they're going to be okay with the lawsuit.
Yeah. Other thing is, you got 11 board members. At some point they're going to meddle a little bit, I would think. And knowing Dana White, how hard is that going to be?
Dana doesn't play well with others, it seems. I think that's a good assessment of his history, that he doesn't look much for help either. Behind the scenes, cutting deals to be on TV and stuff, you make your allies and stuff. But Dana is very aggressive and forceful. And that worked for him with the UFC, again, because there was nobody there really that had the ear of the Fertittas who could also go to them and say, wait, there's another way to do this, and you have to deal with that. The Fertittas gave him carte blanche and let him do what he did. And for 20 years, the money came in, so nobody's challenged him. Now he's going to be challenged in ways that you can't just crap on everybody. The example that's in the news is from the press release with the lawyer,
Yeah. Lawrence Epstein, yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, with that lawyer is what the lawyer said was dumb, but again, that was a good spot for Dana to shut up. That was a good spot to not say anything and not crap on that guy because he's a teammate of yours. Is what you want to present to everybody. A very strong, united front. Everybody's not. You're not calling people dummies in public. But that's that's still the old Dana. Dana always did that. Can he get away with it now? It's like he should feel like the UFC obviously, he's a success. There's no way that you're going to take away that kind of thing. But he should definitely feel like he just went from junior high school to high school. And now you're in there with the high school kids, and you're not the best athlete, maybe. You're not the richest in the room anymore. Other people have the level of legal knowledge in some of the lawyers and gravitas that they're going to put on contracts and things like that. It all may be at a level now that you have to listen. And Dana's not a great listener. So we'll see how it goes. I don't think they can get rid of him, but I think that, if he wants to be counterproductive, like there was no reason to make Epstein look bad in the news, except for Dana wanted to exert some type of ego boost to himself there. Now, did he make an enemy of Epstein? Or is Epstein just another kind of whipped dog?
Yeah, and I would think, when you have more people involved that have power, eventually they want to put their hands into the cookie jar to some extent. Some a lot, some a little bit. And when you got someone like Dana, you don't want their hand in there at all. So I think that could be an interesting dynamic down the road.
Yeah, again, I think if you look at it, and Dana's smart, the Fertittas are smart, I think that Dana's protected by his contract. That he makes all fight-related decisions, period. The more simple the contract, that language is, the more power he has. So, he can do what he wants. Like, he can make people look bad and stuff like that. But then, over the long course, very few people, nobody ever really contradicted Dana. And if they had, they didn't last long. But he could be in a board meeting 3 to 5 years from now with Epstein, and maybe the tables will turn. Very similar to the image I said of them switching the UFC and WrestleMania in position just for the show of it. Maybe Epstein's raised his profile enough in 3 to 5 years that, he remembers this. Or maybe, like I said, he's just kind of one of Dana's, underlings, and he's now been whipped again in public.
No, but I mean, even if you're making all decisions, when you have more people involved, like I said, 11 board members, and you have more voices who are saying, maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that. And that's going to irritate him, even if he's making all the decisions.
To me, you bring up a fascinating point, because nothing in Dana. So what happens is, at some point, if you're going to charge and you're going to get your way, you got to be really active in there, including listening to other people's ideas, weighing them, coming back with a counter argument if that's not the way to go, so that you're managing people. You can't just, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard, get out of here, to high level people. They like a little more respect as well. So that managing of interpersonal relationships, I don't give Dana a lot of that. We may have found his weak spot. He hasn't needed to do it. And now looks like he's going to be forced to do it. And many of the signs that we see in public of him, including, his kind of laissez-faire attitude that he's had these last, many months or whatever, even maybe longer, are attributed to this.
Yeah. Now the crossover thing, I was looking in here that they have a plan. Well, this is what Epstein was talking about, of maybe having more. And here's what I'm talking about, voices already, having more UFC fighters cross over into WWE after their runs are over. So there's an example of the voices already. That's not Dana's idea. But somebody who feels like they have enough voice to make a public statement in this story that's put out.
Yeah, yeah. No, and here's the thing is, I think it could be like the whole thing is like, what is Vince going to bring? Well, they bring WrestleMania, they bring history, library, but they also bring a pedigree that when you go back to the 50s and the wrestlers that trained the guys that were stars in the 50s, those guys were in the discussions of toughest man in the world. The pro wrestler, if the wrestlers could grab a boxer, they were going to win. Many of these wrestlers tried boxing. There's stories of the last name is Hackenschmidt. This is a guy from the turn of the 19th century to the 20th century, and he actually did boxing matches under fake names because nobody, when they heard his name and his reputation from a wrestler, nobody wanted to deal with him. The famous trainer, William Muldoon, who trained John L. Sullivan for his final bare knuckle world championship fight in the 1870s, he was a wrestler from that era. And they used to have wrestling on Wednesdays in bars in New York, the 5 Points, that movie, with Daniel Day-Lewis, that's so interesting, and well developed. But imagine the wrestlers and boxers from that era. Those are men of a different breed. And William Muldoon went on to be the first commissioner of boxing in New York State.
Even the guys in Pride, like Carl Gotch, Sakuraba, and Billy Robinson,
Absolutely.
and those guys, yeah.
Absolutely. The wrestlers have such an influence in this that, yes, when in the 80s, when we found ourselves kind of lost with combat and in an experimental phase, the Japanese were way ahead. The branch that Carl Gotch and the wrestlers have were way ahead in the development of that in the 80s, whereas the UFC only appeared in 93 in the States. So don't get me wrong. The WWE has a lot to benefit from this kind of refreshing retie to what is real fighting. Because at the end of the day, if it keeps going the way it is, the acrobatics and things are obviously, over the top now. And that has a position at some point, but it could also be a phase that goes away for a little while. And there's a refreshing to go back to more of the basics. I know that doesn't sound great, but there's a lot of refreshing. So here's how this idea could work that this guy made in the press release. I look at wrestling now, and I look at wrestling when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, we had Captain Lou Albano, we had Classy Freddie Blassie, we had the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. Later on, you had Slick. There were managers, these figures that bought in fighters. I remember Lou Albano saying, I went to Samoa and came back with these guys, and the Samoans are there. That manager figure is gone. They have Paul Heyman there, who's phenomenal, and he's like Brock Lesnar's handler. But the idea of managers and competitive managers and things, that's something that could return to WWE. And how would Conor McGregor look as a manager?
Yeah.
Conor doesn't need the job, but when you're talking about a guy who's shown the charisma and could add to the storyline over there, there's a good example of a guy that would lift the whole thing up for many people. A manager where he only has to fight and be sneaky because he's smaller. You don't need him in the ring much, although maybe you'll want to blow up and get in there at some point. But I think just exactly like he is, bombastic with the suits and with all the money, and we have the best team and that whole thing. Bring him in, and then bring up some other competitors, some good guys, some bad guys, and things. It's a whole aspect of wrestling. I don't want to say it's lost, but it's dormant. So a lot of guys like that could cross over, and then obviously for the heavyweights, look, if they're healthy and they are still wanting to compete, and they can get into a situation where this is, something sophisticated. We know that Ronda and Brock Lesnar have these kind of cherry deals with the WWE where they don't have to go on the road and do the 200 fights in a year schedule that most of the other people do. But if the WWE were to take older MMA fighters, because they've already maybe have some fame established, maybe they can ease them in with contracts like this and make rare appearances. As long as it builds the story, Vince will take somebody from anywhere. They've had everybody from Snoop Dogg to Logan Paul to Shaquille O'Neal to Floyd Mayweather to Mike Tyson to back in the day Mr. T. Many rappers, country singers, whatever the flavor of the day is, have been involved in the WWE because it makes the show bigger. And I think that's one of the things that Vince is sitting here going like this, eager to do. And that's why he needs that veto power, because if they want to come and go, look, we want to present to you, and I mean this with utter respect, but we want to present Fabrizio Wardun. It's like Vince might say, how's his mic work? It's like, well, okay, Fabrizio's maybe a bad example, but his English isn't going to be WWE type of English. They'd have to come up with a character. They'd have to do a lot of work. But these are moldable guys. I think it's not for everybody. I think some guys will thrive on that, and and it's an avenue for guys to, extend their careers, extend their money-making years. You're talking about guys that by the time they're 40, their best money-making years are over. In most cases, if if their fight career peaked and they made their money, they're not going to make that level of money when they're 53. This is an opportunity for them to have more income. There's nothing wrong with that. Presented right. And the WWE always, with their storylines and their creative, you may like it or hate it, but they're meticulous. So I don't think that they're going to rush into things. And I think it could be done well. The managers, like I said, with a guy like McGregor would make a great manager because of his mic control, and he could be a guy who would take bumps, so it has amazing potential.
One thing that I found interesting in this story is UFC's petition when they filed the appeal. They actually conceded here that they conceded that the fighters did not receive equivalent money to their growth in revenue in the appeal. What do you think about that?
That's where I would like to be able to question the lawyer again. But off the top of my head, I would think that might be a straw being put out to see if there's some type of deal that can be made. So if they concede that, at some point somebody sits down with a calculator and say, this is what the figure is. This is about how much you should have spent on that. Then they take that and divide it up. But again, the rest of the peccadillos and worse that are in the lawsuit that are, such as changing your business practices, would be something. The moment the lawyers say, it's like then the UFC says, okay, so we underpaid and it's going to cost us $5 billion. Okay, and that's probably a big number, but say $2 billion. Where do we pay? Wait, but you got to change your business practices. Do you want the money or not? That's the UFC's answer. That's what that is. So that's just legal play, I think. So they'll put a dollar figure on what that is, and whatever that dollar figure is the UFC will be working to drive it down through books. We spent on this and this and this, and nobody thinks about this and things, and maybe hiding income streams. So we'll see. Like I said, I firmly believe that the initial intent of the UFC by the Fertitta brothers coming in, keep in mind they're a casino. So they are the house. And they always say the house wins, right? They wanted a new sport to take more money into the casinos. And lo and behold, there's a lot of gambling now going on these fights. And the house always wins. So they've created a steady income where there was none before. And that income from betting is some of the hardest to track. And not to mention, has Dana done any inside betting? I've never heard that, but he likes to bet. And, was there a point early in his career where, he knew, he had a hunch Chuck was going to beat Tito. He was in the gym with them. He kind of had that one read real good. and maybe made some money that way. I don't know. He's got to have $1 billion in there, at this point. So, but again, the edginess of all that stuff, that income is the one that blew up as well. Does that income that the Fertittas get, is that something that the fighters should be compensated for? I don't know. I don't know, but that's what I would like to ask the lawyer, because that's I think the main reason. But if you don't include the gambling money they make, still the pay-per-views, the T-shirts, the marketing, everything like that, they're going to come up with a dollar figure. And if the lawsuit bites it, they may not try to change the business practices. That's what they're going to try to do.
It says here that the fighters made an estimated just 13% of the revenue.
Okay, so what is the right number? Is it 50-50?
I don't know. Yeah, the NBA, NFL, it's closer to that, I guess. Yeah.
And they've gotten it so refined in some of those leagues. I'm not sure which one these details come from, but just memory from the past. Every 6 years there's another bargaining agreement that they go through and things. And they've got those percentages down so fine that sometimes it's like, well, they're going to get 51%, 52%. They're moving it up one at a time now, 13 to 50. No joke. No joke. But that's what the NFL, NBA, NFL, they're at that standard of giving 50% to the fighters. And that's why you see, fighters, the athletes. That's why you see, some athletes, LeBron James is getting a huge piece of the pie there, right? But there is a pie there that's much bigger. So what that would mean is the elite of the elite, that John Jones could be $100 million person. And yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit more about the, like the shows on the same weekend kind of thing. How much of I know you touched on a little bit, but how much of an impact or how much of a growth do you think that would have on the two products?
The thing about both companies is that they've shown a capacity to continue growth. The MMA, you kind of got the feeling that there was going to be an ebb and flow, and but they've really managed to come back with new peaks, one way or another. And the WWE the same. So I kind of feel like that's the way it's going to go. That's just going to keep getting bigger. How could it get bigger? So what happens is you got to find the right places. Dallas, the stadium is perfect, and then they got to have the hotels, the packages, the typical mafia behavior. Get the entire thing, create an event for a week, or at least a 4-day weekend where people come. And now you're able to get to that Disneyland effect where it's like, well, this weekend everybody's going to pay $22 for Cokes. But the people don't stop going to the Super Bowl. So, but I think that's the next level, is that the prices for the events and the prices for some of those things, you'll see the prices for the pay-per-views, if they continue to use that medium of distribution, will all go up.
If they can get any higher.
Yeah, but that's the thing is they know they'll have to offer more. But what would you pay for a front row seat at WWE, say Mega Fight 1, Mega Fight 2, and they do a April event with WrestleMania, wherever that is. Both companies, because WrestleMania has done 80,000 seat stadiums. But then they've taken it back to the 20,000 seaters. Never go back to the 20,000 seaters with the weekend. Present a carnival type of atmosphere where everything is taken care of. And yeah, you'll see the prices go up, and you'll see that it'll be less common people that are able to afford it, and it'll be more of an elite crowd. And that's kind of the way, those things are going to go. Where it's like, you see every chance the UFC gets, and the WWE, but every chance the UFC gets, they show celebrities in the crowd and things like that, and that's what you're going to see more of. It's just that the crowd is going to be, with more spending power than the average crowd now, and it's a pretty high spending power crowd right now. Males 25 to 50, there's a lot of money there in across the board. So, but there is still fighting and stuff. There's still like a blue collar aspect to people and things like that, where it's like golf is all of that type of elite. And I don't think they mind that type of jump if, they bring a few. The thing is, with population growth, there's also more people, more spending money, more people out there. This happened in boxing at the turn of the century too. At the 1900s, you already had in the cities, New York, for example, office workers. And these were usually white men that wore the ties, but they were already ties and suits and going, to be a stockbroker or an accountant or this. There was already a middle class. And it was those guys that Jack Dempsey's fighting in Utah, or, Joe Gans is fighting in Utah. I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to train out there and go, by train and go see the fight and come back. And that's how boxing started to grow, because they could go out west where they could do the fights they wanted to, and the people had the money. Money was available for them to actually go continue to root for the fight. There was nothing like seeing a live fight in 1900, because there was no TV, there was none of that stuff where you were actually going to see it. If you didn't see it, you had to read about it. So they grew a group of upper middle class people, fans, that had the money to do the whole trip. And guess who? The promoter would rent special trains to bring people out there and grab some of the money. That's what the UFC is going to do. Fly in on the Fertitta's jet and be a first class, VIP member of a big fight weekend and pay $10,000 a head. There's guys out there that'll do it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. What do you think about Valentina versus Grasso this weekend?
I think it's. Well, I wonder what the odds are. I haven't looked, but I think it's. I think Shevchenko is an exceptional fighter. And skill wise, and precision wise, she even has some advantages over Amanda. Amanda's bigger and Amanda's beaten her, so there's no reason to beat a horse. But I think you're talking about an exceptional fighter and underappreciated. Speaks a few languages. The UFC could put her, on a higher pedestal, I think. Which is what makes the Grasso win so notable. And Grasso, one of the last MMA fights I promoted here in Central America was with her uncle, and he's one of her trainers. And so she comes kind of from a fighting family and real good people. And I have a tendency to root for Grasso because of that relationship. But I'm not sure that Shevchenko, if she can get her mind together, and she's always been strong mentally, but if she can get her mind together and be focused on, like, I just lost my title, I'm not good with that, Grasso's going to have a hard time getting the repeat. But you never know.
Well, I mean, do you think we saw a dip in Shevchenko, or no?
No, I think you saw Grasso come through with a performance that, is for the ages. But is she a Jim Braddock? And I don't mean to discredit, but I do need to see a little more. Like, Jim Braddock beat Sugar Ray, and then that was the end of it. Did she just beat an all-time great fighter? And is she going to lose the rematch? Now, sealing the deal is very important for Grasso and would elevate Grasso a great deal. But she does need to seal the deal, because if she loses here, then they'll eventually do the rematch again, and then we'll know. But I think Grasso right now is in a strong position where to win against Shevchenko, then firmly she's the top dog at 125. I don't know that Shevchenko wouldn't argue that she's still top dog even despite the loss. So that's what looks to be resolved here. I think it's an exceptional fight. I think it's actually perhaps more exciting to me than Nunez or whatever was going on at the top of the 135-pound division the last couple of years.
I think that's a great thing to end on. It should be an interesting rematch. And as always, I want to give you a chance to talk about the Wet Nose Project. We always kind of close on that.
Cool. Yeah. Well, this weekend I'm going to take a bunch of volunteers out. It's Independence Day here, so starting tomorrow is activities and people are off work and stuff. So I'm going to take a group of individuals from that are volunteers from the area here and just do some money collection. Take some of the dogs down to the park down there, some of the more social dogs, and just kind of try to make a presence that see what people think. I think it's a good country where people rally around the animals as well. It's just making a presence. So I'm gonna try something new and have some fun. Get out in the air. It's beautiful here. So
and there's always people will put some in the show notes. Go find me there if you guys want to contribute to this project in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be making videos, but the bottom line is that there's a lot of other things to do, and videos, I can tape. If I'm the camera guy, then who's doing the talking and things? So I just want to do them right, and hopefully, it's a good long-term project. I'm going to be doing this anyway, so we're having fun. But we'll have more videos and things out there for people to see of the actual work being done, because some of it's a lot of emotions in it, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, as always, Miguel, it's good stuff here.
Wait, let's be close. We can close with this, right?
What?
You sent me an article about Dana White in public making a statement how he felt nothing when his parents died.
Mm-hmm.
For the fans out there, ask yourself: would Dana White rescue a dog?
Yeah, I thought that was a sad statement, man. I mean, I know there's some people like that, but for example, I worked at a shelter for kids that were removed from the house, by DHS. These kids were abused, neglected. They all loved their parents, all of them. You know what I mean? And here's a guy who doesn't even care that his parents died. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I think he's a person that, nobody ever really took a look at exactly how he ticks. And some of the signs you see now, like, you wonder how his run lasted so long, and so we'll see. I thought that was kind of a sad statement. And that's another good example. We can close on this so we don't keep rambling. But, earlier on in the podcast, I said Dana should have kept his mouth shut instead of raping the lawyer. Here's another example. If that's how you really feel, keep your mouth shut, you lizard. You know what I mean? It's like nobody wants to hear that you're a freaking evil person that doesn't feel anything. Yeah. But that's what he reveals. And again, nobody says what I say, but it's like he's a guy who's once he's in the room, he might have $1 billion. He might be moving the thing forward. He might be able to cut off this, that, and the other thing. But then when you start getting to know that way about his parents and stuff, most people will be like, yeah, enough, buddy. Enough, buddies. That's a bad sign. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't
more think, than the Dana White show this year.
If he's looking for sympathy, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Because I think more people will probably think, man, why would you say something like that about your parents?
Yeah, no. His parents are probably if they're normal parents, despite him being vile and evil, his parents are probably wherever they go trying to make an excuse for them to let Dana in when he gets there. That's if you believe in the afterlife and all that sort of stuff, a little fantasy there. But the point is Dana's a lizard. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. I know him and his mom went back and forth because we saw that, when Jerry Millen flew her out to his house and interviewed her. But, it's understandable they had their differences, but even she, wanted to reconcile with him. But
Yeah, and that's the point is mom, it's a mom. You know what I mean? Everybody has a mom, but those relationships are, when you get sad when you hear it's like, yeah, I'm estranged from my family, I don't talk to my family, I can't, you know, all those things are not, you know, they happen, but most people don't put them out there. You know what I mean? And Dana just in public feels he can say anything, including stuff like this. It's like, why say that in public? Does that have to be known about you? And what good does it do? Do people think it's like, wow, he's so cool? I wish I wasn't burdened by emotions like that. That's not going to be the general reaction to that. So why do you need to say it? Because of his ego. So shut up, Dana.
yeah, I thought it made him look bad. And to say, oh, I moved my dad out to Maine so he could, live out his final years with his family. That's your father, you know. You didn't
Yeah.
care, you know. It's come on.
It sounds like he's accounting there, accounting in his head. It's like, all right, I spent, on his house and this, that. So he's spending money and stuff. He's got it. It still doesn't show like human emotion. Like,
Yeah,
like I care. Like, I'll give a little, if there's anybody out there that is still listening to us, here's a little bit of MMA news that goes along down this part, pulls my heartstrings. Is longtime hook and shoot referee, and he also refereed the Kimbo fight with Petrozelli, the Kimbo fight with some of those people. Troy Waugh went into brain surgery to have a tumor removed at 11 in the morning, and we're waiting to hear. So this is a second time, and it was kind of rushed. So we're all hoping to hang on. And I'm sorry to say, I'm not like Dana, and I feel this one. This is my buddy. We started together in MMA in the '90s, and we rode together a lot. And he's also a person in the MMA history. And the people listening here will remember Troy as a ref, especially if you look up the names. So somebody to keep in your thoughts. He may be with us, he may not be with us by the time you hear this. So God bless him.
quick recovery for Troy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone that listened to the show, as always, thanks for the support. And until next time, take care.
Yes, sir.